All right, and welcome back to another thrilling installment of Turn the Page. That's right, your favorite guys are back to talk to you about comic books, movies, and television shows. Oh, and let's not forget toys that you'd still like to buy even though you're an adult. Why? Because you have the budget to do so now. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, share with your friends, your grandmother, and all of her friends. And keep telling everybody about Turn the Page. We like to bring you fun, we like to bring you enjoyment, we like to keep everything as calm as possible, especially during 2020. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and break into the hard stuff first. Let's talk about the news. There are several things that are going on now in the fan casting slash possible casting arena. We have some big news about an old Batman. Have you heard anything about that, Rano?
Yeah, I'm guessing it's still a Flashpoint movie, but regardless, the new Flash movie that's due out in, I think, 2021, there's rumor, well, it's not rumored now, but it's actually Michael Keaton's in talks to play Batman.
Which means, yeah, we could actually have Batman play Batman again. That's amazing.
That would be really, really cool. And I personally, at first I was like, I don't know about it. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yes, let's do this. We need Michael Keaton. And I think he would further cement of him being the best Batman there is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even though they used the voice of Batman in the DC Universe crossover event for the CW.
Oh, yeah, that was a big deal, too.
That was a big deal, but even the way he did it it almost felt like he wasn't Batman. The voice was there, so it's like he sounds like Batman.
Yeah.
But he didn't feel like Batman. He was villainous almost. It was
I was kind of disappointed in that they took that iconic voice of Batman and then made him like not the greatest Batman.
Yeah, he should have been a little bit more heroic.
Yeah, he should have been. He should have been the Kingdom Come Batman. Should have been from the same world that the Christopher Reeve Superman was from. They should have fused those together because they were already, the Tim Burton verse, they were already going to cross over Superman with Batman in the future, but they didn't get a chance to. And to be honest, they should have just gone ahead and just said, hey, they're in the same universe.
Would that have been the Nick Cage Superman that they would have crossed over with?
Superman Lives.
It'd have been Nick. Yeah,
that would have been interesting. yeah. I mean, like that's a Tim Burton Batman era, and if there's a crossover, it would have been Nicolas Cage, long-haired Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, it would have been.
Now, speaking of bad Batmans, though, there's actually some big news on the comic book front. We've got the returning Scott Snyder to write the second installment of Dark Knight's Metal called Dark Knight's. What is he calling it? This one's called Death Metal. So the first issue of that has dropped. They're planning several different issues, including multiversal relooks at Nightfall, Death of Superman, Infinite Worlds,
so kind of like
Judas Contract.
Like a different universe's version of that storyline. So
all those storylines, but from the Dark Multiverse, which is what
that sounds
Dark Metal said.
That's something I'd like to read.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it. Plus, Scott Snyder with Greg Capullo returning to help him with his artistry. So you have that classic team up that made the New 52 Batman really what it was at its core, which was the two of them working together. Now, the Tinian isn't great, but with Greg Capullo working with Scott Snyder, the story being told and the art being very reflective of what we would see more of that Dark Knight look, that has me very excited. So, of course, you're going to have other artists in on the gig and some other writers and stuff of that nature, but the main arc is going to be penned by them. So, I'm pretty stoked about that myself.
Me too, man.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be fantastic.
Also something. Oh, go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was just going to reiterate my happy feelings towards the introduction of the Tim Burton Batman. That's all. That's all I was saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, no, I'm
yeah,
really
definitely.
stoked for Michael Keaton, and even if they have him playing a little bit more of a gritty old Batman or something of that nature, he
Well, he
still
does
has
pretty
that.
well.
Yeah, he's a very good actor at most of anything that he does, whether it's comedy, serious roles. He can play the good guy, he can play the bad guy, but he
He's
always does it in
fantastic.
such a way that we like him while he's doing it. So even if they do something a little bit more strange and out there, having Batman be a little bit more hardened by age or grizzled by whatever he's been through,
Or cynical, more cynical Batman.
right? He could be cynical and still pull it off because he's Keaton and he
Yeah.
does so well with that. So
He's such a good actor, though. That's the thing.
yeah, he
Yeah,
pulls it all
because-
through. He experiences it. I feel like he just
Like, so-
keeps bringing himself.
If they bring him in, and so that means at least Batman 1 and Batman Returns are canon. What about the Val Kilmer Batman? What about the George
No,
Clooney
those
What the-
movies are being made non-canon now.
Well, what they're
okay.
saying is that each of the movies, each of the TV shows, each of the comic book iterations is all its own separate multiverse. So you could look at the Keaton movies as the Burton verse, so like the DC Burton verse,
Mhm.
something of that nature, and then you have the Schumacher verse, which you can just skip right over when you're traveling through the multiverse.
Unless the Schumacher verse is from the Dark Multiverse.
It's from a very dark place I don't want to talk about.
Oh, and just
But yeah.
a quick shout out, rest in peace, Joel Schumacher.
Oh,
I heard he was a really great guy. If I'm not super fan of some of his movies, he did contribute.
Yeah.
anyway. If it
he
wasn't for Joel
contributed
Schumacher,
to things, but
yeah, we wouldn't
um,
have "Kissed by a Rose" by Seal. Like that would not have been a thing.
yeah, if we hadn't
Yeah.
had that song, I think we couldn't have gotten by.
Like
through
it
a lot of our
shapes a part of
problems.
me. I think that. So in some way, Joel Schumacher has like shaped a very small part of me. Because to
Yeah,
this day,
definitely. I
that,
mean,
that song's
it's.
come on the radio if it ever does anymore. But like,
I mean, I got some of my most favorite lines ever from the Batman and Robin movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
For the
I love
comedy's
quoting
worth
that
of it, you
every
got
day.
comedy there. They do.
You know what I remember? I remember Batman and Robin land on this like metal, structure, and Robin's like, "Holy rusted steel, Batman!" And
No,
Batman's
really,
like,
look,
"What?"
yeah,
Yeah. It's just like that's the kind of nod we got back in the day. It's like
it was very much the Adam West version.
Oh, yeah.
So they were
I mean,
definitely
even Tim
going for
Burton,
that.
like he didn't have a whole lot of respect for the subject matter, and he actually even made fun of like people who read comics while he was like being interviewed about his movie. But like Tim Burton has a certain stylistic flavor, and he is a competent director, and so those movies were all right, and they got good actors like Michael Keaton. But yeah, so all of them, like they're in their own little area, and I judge them based on like a curved scale of time, and
Well, definitely, but I think that the timeless nature of the first Batman movie, the '89 version, with having Keaton there and Nicholson, I think that the whole Joker Batman dynamic wouldn't be what it is today without that having had happened. Because Joker was a deal. He was a villain for Batman, but it wasn't like, oh God, I have to see the Joker fight Batman in every single iteration of everything ever. Until after that occurred, and then they were like, okay, this is the most iconic villain for him, just because of the way that those two were able to play off with each other as actors, I believe.
Oh yeah. That both Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson made that movie. I guess technically literally with Tim Burton. Tim Burton made the movie too.
Well, I mean, you can write lines for Jack Nicholson and hope that he's going to say the lines that you gave him.
Yeah, he might not. He might say his own way. And he did actually have a lot of influence in like even the look of the Joker himself. Like Burton wanted a more clown-like Joker with very bright green hair. And Jack was like, I don't think this is going to play right. I understand what you're going for, but I think a more realistic setting would be better. So kind of bring back those tones. And they tried it Burton's way with some test shots, and it did not work. And so they're like, you know what, you're right, Jack. Let's pull back on the bright green hair. And what you get is kind of like, I guess, as natural as you can get to that kind of situation, like a darker green, a more natural green.
Less radioactive.
Less radioactive,
Yeah.
less like neon wig, because I think that initially they had him wearing like a bright neon colored wig or something, and Jack just
Goodness.
wasn't having it. And he did like he found that character. The way he's dressed, he wanted like that kind of sense of style
Yeah.
that Jack Napier had carry across. The gangster aspect was perfect.
It was very good. It did. So on top of all that, so we've got new comic books coming out. We've got new movies that are still planned to come out. Even if the world ends, we'll still get to see them.
I have one to
We'll
add.
watch him in heaven.
What's that?
I have a movie to add too. I actually just read this news. Actually, right before we started filming, the director of John Wick said that Highlander is very much in heavy development right now.
Oh wow!
Well, like a Highlander remake, a Highlander.
It's got to be, right?
I think
it's a
it's
continuation.
I think it's a remake. Yeah, it's a reboot.
Like I'm Connor McLeod or I'm Duncan McLeod. Like, I mean, there's so much
No.
history there.
No idea on that
For Lambert,
as much as that. As far as I know, it's coming. That's all I know right now.
Lambert should play the part of the Spaniard that was originally played by Sean Connery, and then he should make fun about not knowing what haggis is on a boat with somebody playing the new Connor McLeod.
That would be beautiful.
I think Conor McGregor should be in it too, just for fun. he could be the main villain that's like hunting down the new Connor McLeod in the future.
And so everywhere he walks in, it's that silly strut that he does, but with a sword.
It was a really too tight suit.
But like just a ridiculously big sword. Like he's actually carrying around
like
a
it's the same
claymore.
size as a sword.
Yeah, the sword's a little bit bigger than him.
Yeah, I always thought of Conor. For some reason, Conor McGregor always came across as being really short to me. But
He
he's
is.
not.
No, he's not very big.
He's not big. Like he's not like some 6 foot tall giant or anything.
He's about 5'7".
No, I thought he was like 5'9". Is he not, somebody look that up. Get the peanut gallery.
Look that up. Get the IP guy on this.
Well, see, I have a problem like seeing how tall people are.
Well, especially
screen.
when he walks, because when he walks, he leans back.
Well, he walks like a short person. Yeah, he walks like a really short person with a chip on his shoulder. Maybe that's why I think he's short. But I don't think he actually is. I feel like I've looked this up before. But like another person, I've been watching some Space Force, and I could have swore that John Malkovich was short in that.
No, John Malkovich is not short.
No, he's tall. Like I looked it up. He's like 6 feet. And Steve Carell, I think, is actually like my height.
Yeah, he's about 5'10".
Everyone, so you can't misjudge how tall I am. I'm like
Conor McGregor is 5'9". So you're
5'9".
right.
He's taller than Iron Man.
He's taller than Iron Man, but the shots for Iron Man are shot very well. He doesn't look that much shorter than everybody else.
In the movies, Iron Man's the same height as Chris Evans. Like if you look at the shots, like either somebody's standing on a box or someone's standing in a hole.
I guess they need to work on the guys that are taking these shots for the UFC fights then.
Yeah, I don't know. He just looks short to me. I know he's
going to make him look a little bit taller.
I don't know how we got off on this. Oh yeah, Highlander. He should be in Highlander.
Yes, he should be in the Highlander with a claymore sword that's bigger than
turn the page on this.
Turn the page. That's right, gentlemen. All right. So with all those things coming down the pike, I definitely think there are some things to look forward to. People can get excited about. But yeah, I'd throw out there to definitely go ahead, and if you have the propensity to read comics as they're released, then check out the new Death Metal series, because definitely Scott Snyder deserves that credit there where credit's due. And as you're going about things, also keep your eyes on the prize, as several video games are still being scheduled for release between Avengers, and they're talking about a new Avengers War Room, I believe, addition to the game, so that you can multiplayer through it. You've got, of course, Cyberpunk is going to come out sometime.
November.
Okay.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to that.
But those are pretty big games. I think that people have been really waiting on. And PC is going to platform for the Avengers game. So you don't just have to have it on one of the consoles. You can actually be a PC gamer and enjoy the fun, join in on that.
That's
from
pretty
what
cool.
I've heard.
I also heard that they're porting over the Iron Man VR game to PC.
That would be neat. That would be neat. I definitely would like to try that out sometime. Just VR that.
Well, you are Iron Man, so
I have a
Yeah.
PlayStation VR.
Well, I'd like to try it out sometime. I feel like you would need like some sort of a, I'm not going to say the words, but like a swing system so that you could lay in it, so that if you had to do barrel rolls or something in the VR system, it would feel realistic.
Yeah, speaking of barrel rolls,
one of those
the
wind tunnels.
Star Wars Squadrons is coming out later this year as
I
well.
know, that looks so good. That looks
And
so awesome.
what's amazing about it is they announced that you can play the entire game in VR, including multiplayer.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I've been wanting something like this ever since X-Wing, and X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter came out.
So we're getting closer and closer to
actually,
Player One, Ready Player One.
Closer, you know, it's going to probably be another 20 years. But speaking of the Squadrons, there is, and it was brought to my attention today, there is a mod of the original X-Wing game that upgrades the graphics, uses the same code, it just kind of overlays new models and textures on everything. And that has been, they're producing a VR version of it that they'll release here soon. So I'm excited about that. I can literally play the original game in VR, probably before Squadrons come out. So that'll be interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can
also
put the links to that, you know, whenever they do this. I'll give them to Dan.
Yeah, get them over to Dan. Get them over to the IT department. There's another thing that I saw. Now, this might be a little bit part of the darker corner of the internet as far as fandom is concerned, but there is a production company called Bat in the Sun, and they have done several productions as far as fan fiction Batman movies. They have a show called Superpower Beatdown that comes out pretty regularly, where fans are allowed to vote on what person they would like to kill the other person in the video, and then they actually film this. So it's a very legit, as far as like a YouTube channel, something to watch and enjoy. I think that they've always released solid content. One of the things that I saw that we've actually, as a company, we've actually put in for their Kickstarter is the Legend of the White Dragon. So it's going to star the Green Ranger, Jason David Frank. It's got several other characters that played actors from the series throughout different iterations of the series.
Johnny Young Bosch.
Yeah, the Black Ranger from the Ninja Rangers. So they're definitely putting a lot into it, but the new suit looks amazing. They've got a teaser trailer out, so go ahead. If you're a fanboy at all about Power Rangers, or just watching people recreate things with great production quality for the free price of tuning in on your computer, then go ahead and click over for Bat in the Sun Productions and just check out Legend of the White Dragon. I think everybody would enjoy that trailer and seeing the new design that they've given to the uniform. It's pretty stellar. So big shout out to them. Started by a young man named Aaron Shonecki. Probably going to butcher his last name, but Shonecki. I'm so sorry. But he's cool. He's really cool. He started it out as a kid, teenager, and just filming himself. His company, though. Yeah. He started as a teenager and filming his own prop sets and doing a lot of the acting himself and his filming. And his father helped him out with a lot of it, from what I understand.
He's living the dream.
So he's doing well for himself. So keep checking that out. We're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. And when we get back, we will talk about villains turned heroes. And everybody give a shout out to Ronnie. Thank you for joining us, even though you are injured and laid up. He has injured his foot, but he's still here with us, even though he's got to keep it elevated. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's hope he's still with us when we get back from commercial break.
Yeah, don't die, Ronnie.
All right. We'll check you in a minute.
Hey there! Does your life suck? Does your boss always tell you what to do? Does your wife tell you to sell all your toys? Well, maybe that happens to us too. But there's a place that you can go every Saturday night where you can find great stories about slimy-fingered trolls and gnomes with magical powers, dragons trying to take over the world, and weird-shaped dice. You don't know what to call them? Dodecahedrons? Maybe? I don't know, but there's numbers on every single side, and if you roll a nat 20, you might win the game. That's right, we're talking about Saturday Night Gaming. If you tune in on Podbean, on iTunes, on Google stuff, look us up, Saturday Night Gaming. It's a podcast. It's great to listen to. Download it, play it in your phone, on your car. You got a long road trip coming up? Saturday Night Gaming. You got to drive to work where your boss constantly annoys you? Saturday Night Gaming. If you ever just think, I don't know how to get to sleep tonight, Saturday Night Gaming. Tune in for Saturday Night Gaming. Check out all of our excellent podcasts. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and share with your grandmother. Right, guys?
Right, SN Gaming 2017.
McClay agrees.
I can't share with my grandmother.
That's sad. Let's make sure that part gets in there.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for enjoying our amazing commercial break. Those are high quality commercials, so I hope you enjoy every second of them, every single time we show them to you. So let's go ahead and break into the hardcore, the meat of this fruit that we call the show. Let's go ahead and say supervillains turned heroes. I believe we're going to try and stay in the medium of American comic book lore.
Oh no, because I have so many people that are the villain that turn to the hero.
Yeah, well, you can't talk about current politicians.
Well, no, I wasn't gonna do that. Is there
no
a
mythological
politician that turned hero? Does that happen?
I don't know if either word is allowed to be used for politicians.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was gonna use some classic literature.
Some Dickens.
About some Dickens, some Christmas Carol action. Get some Ebenezer Scrooge. You know.
A little Ebenezer coming in.
Yeah, the classic villain turned hero.
That's true.
Like if you can find one like before that, like that'd be cool.
No, usually they live long enough to become the villain. That's usually the way it goes.
Yeah, the paradigm is usually like either the villains are flat evil just to be like the protagonist, or like the antagonist, and they aren't really given the character development I feel they deserve.
Like in early MCU movies. Now, granted, I'm never going to badmouth the MCU. I love the MCU, but within their earlier iterations, until you got Loki and until you got Thanos, you didn't see a whole lot of the villains showing potential to be returned characters. Now, they had the potential. They had the actors that could do it, but they just didn't show anything other than a basic 2D, I'm the bad guy of this movie. I'm here to try and kill the good guy so that the good guy can be dynamic. And then you have Robert Downey Jr., of course, winning.
Yeah.
Well, I do like him as like, the atypical like hero, the reluctant hero kind of archetype. And I kind of wish they had given like the villain like a kind of like victimhood or reluctant villain. Like,
I think that's where they were going with that Whiplash character played by Mickey Rourke. Was that
he didn't come across as like, I mean, he was a victim of circumstance, but it was not a sympathetic. Like, they didn't really. The character was not a sympathetic character.
But he just wanted his bird.
Like, if you're going to have like a villain who's just an a-hole, right? That's fine. But I'm going to want some character development. I want to know why he's like he is.
Thanos is a perfect example of a villain who's just a straight up, like you said, a-hole. But throughout Infinity War, I felt like a lot of people actually started rooting for him a little bit. They're like, man, I hope he snaps. I hope he gets all the jewels.
Thanos is right, banners.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that's a good lead-in, though, because in that movie, we had the turnaround for one of the characters that people started rooting for that they didn't know they were going to, and that's Loki. Because when he started out, atypical bad guy, super jealous brother, whatever else, And then through each movie, you see him actually become a worse person and then eventually a better person. So he was just so dynamic through each of his roles. And then when you eventually saw him willing to sacrifice himself just for the honor of being Asgardian or for being Odinson, that's the first time he said Odinson. He was a son of Odin.
I think that the way that they set his character up initially, they didn't just make him a bad guy to be a bad guy, but they explained like why he felt the way he felt. Like there was some empathy that you could feel for him, even though you didn't feel his actions were the right thing to do. You could understand why, like he would feel a certain way.
How he got to that point.
And so like that humanization of him actually made it possible, I think, to turn him into a hero in the minds of like the audience.
Yeah, so definitely as far as the comic book iterations turned into movies, that's one of the biggest examples that I can think of right now that went from, your atypical bad guy to actually becoming heroic. Even though he was still doing it in a real shyster kind of way.
He was still risking his life. I mean,
he was risking his
twice.
Life. He did.
Yeah.
He did. He died for it. And also, I think the big thing about him was he was always willing to get help.
And that's kind of what he wanted. Like, he wanted to be a part of something. And I think he felt that he wasn't a true part of it. And like, that's why he wanted to be in that position, like do all those evil things to become like the king of Asgard, is because he wanted that affection that he wasn't given as a child.
Well, yeah, and especially in the iteration that we're talking about, he was the son of a king. So not only is he raised by a king in a great kingdom, he's supposedly the son of a king, which in the Marvel Comics iteration, Lothi, not being a woman but being a man, is the king of the Frost Giants. So his father loses the battle to Odin, so he loses a kingdom. That princeling, loses a kingdom that he could have inherited, and then goes to another kingdom to be raised next to the guy who's going to inherit a kingdom. So there's a lot going on there that makes sense as to why he would be a little bit, out for revenge, mad, angry, jealous. It all made sense.
Also,
but eventually,
he feels like he deserves to rule, like because he literally had his birthright taken from him.
Right. Well, I mean, he was burdened with great purpose. I'm going to keep on throwing out lines from the movies, and y'all are just going to keep looking at me.
What do you guys think of? And this is like, it's somewhat outside the realm of comics, but there's some bleed into comics, so I'm going to say it. Darth Vader. Like that's
Darth
kind of the
Vader,
full circle. Like
he is a
to
full
villain
circle.
Back to hero. Yeah.
And they have done comics of him, so I will let that fly. But
yeah, that's why I figured I could bring it up.
Yeah, old Annie. He's not okay, and he never was okay. So even from the get-go, that's another example of somebody who was just born into a crap situation, and eventually got hard because of it. Like he became a hardened soul because he saw so much bad and injustice.
Like he was hard for him to trust, and like trust is one of those things you need if you want to have healthy relationships with other people. Like
well, not just trust, but belief. Anybody. So if you're going to believe in another person, but not only that, believe in the better part of the grand people.
Like the underlying belief that what happens is supposed to happen. There's an underlying kind of plan for it.
Yeah, or that people can be good somewhere
people
inside.
People are inherently good.
Have you guys seen Clone Wars?
I have not. I need
the series.
The series, no, sir. I've tried. It's a lot. And
it's a lot.
It is a lot to take in, and it's a lot of time that I have to usually.
It ties in with Mandalorian, so it might be
okay. No, I was going to make a point about this. If you guys don't mind, it's kind of a spoiler too.
I mean, so I think it's the journey that matters, Ron.
I think I know what happens to him in the end.
Yeah, I think we know what happens to Anakin in the end.
I was going to say that. During the Clone Wars series, you see him start to become a little bit more unhinged as it goes on. You actually get to see it literally adds a lot to episode 3.
Yeah, I would like to see that because in the movies, it's like he goes from this innocent little boy to an a-hole, and but that doesn't mean he's because
some crazy princess robbed the cradle.
Yeah, although I do I have since tried to like, rationalize it and come with my own ideas as to why, like, there's such a flip, right, from light to dark for Force users. And really what
You
it
see
is,
it in this.
well, really what I always thought it was just bad acting or bad scripting or bad direction. But really it could have been that because they're Force sensitive, it's very hard to be balanced between the two. It's like you're teetering between light and dark, and it's really easy to flip one way or the other. And so if you lean a little bit towards one side, the whole thing tops over. And now you're completely evil or completely good. That's why the Jedi had to be so strict with their rules, because they knew that any deviation could lead really quickly to the dark side. And I think that kind of idea that I have in my head works really well with the way like the Star Wars had played out, like why Kylo Ren was able to. And by the way, Kylo Ren's another good example of a villain turned to hero.
Well, the hard part with the Star Wars iterations is that normally what you have is a good person who gets put on a wrong path, who then corrects their path later on. You don't see like what's his name, Darth Sidious.
Darth Sidious. Well, there's a good guy Palpatine theory.
Is
where he's
there?
actually doing, yes, there is. He's doing this to save the galaxy, and it's just not about the Republic or the Empire. It's about everyone in the galaxy. So he needs to fortify and he needs to bring everyone together under one rule, because there's an outside threat, and outside the galaxy there's something coming.
Yeah, there's people in history who actually tried that out. And I think that ultimately what it boiled down to was it's not just about what your ends are, because the ends don't justify the means. It is about how you go about it. It is, so you can't just slaughter, like Thanos, you can't slaughter a whole bunch of people to save the universe because the ends didn't justify the means. So
like the opposite of that would be Captain America's philosophy, like, no one gets left behind. It's like, but we'll all die, right?
Right, but they don't get left behind. That's what matters.
Our people behind, that's what matters. It's like, what are we saving if not our humanity? Maybe we might die, but we'll die by doing what we should be doing.
Well, think about just Batman. Okay, so Batman doesn't kill. He doesn't. He's got a strict rule about it because he knows that that's the line that he can't cross. That's what would make him completely lose the whole morality that he at least has going for himself.
Well, I mean, that would kind of be analogous to the whole Jedi Sith thing. Like if he allowed himself to kill, he's far enough on that side to where like nothing matters anymore. Like, he's above the law in every way. And so that kind of mentality can be dangerous, especially in the hands of someone as powerful as Bruce Wayne.
But I think that with even in history and then also just in comic books, what I found is that you have a character who's qualified as a villain, right? He's a bad guy. Why? Because he's against the main protagonist of the book, right? So you have characters like Deathstroke. Deathstroke is the bad guy of the Teen Titans. But eventually, what happens? A lot of people like the characters. They want to see the character, maybe even give the character his own title. Well, how are you going to write a title about him just killing people all the time and being bad? You can't really. So you have to humanize them. The second you humanize these people and make it to where we can empathize with the means that they're using to justify the ends that they're getting to, that's when they stop becoming so much a villain and more of an anti-hero, in our opinion. So even like the Punisher. Punisher's not a hero. He's not a good guy. He's a bad guy. He started out as a bad guy. But you give him his own title because he's really popular. Well, then people start to look at him as an anti-hero. Well, yeah, he's a vigilante. Yeah, he's blasting people's heads off all the time. Oh, yeah, when Garth Ennis was writing it, I mean, he was just horrible, horrible person. But people saw him as heroic, and they root for him because you're seeing it from his side. And in everybody's mind, they're the good guy of their own story.
And Venom would
I wanted to add one more thing. I think that was in spoiler territory for Vader. I think the thing that really caused him to really go down the deep end, his Padawan Ahsoka was one of the things that was keeping him on the light side. And when she left the Jedi Order, because I mean, you got to think, he already has a sense of abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Betrayal and abandonment.
so
Personally, I find him to be whiny. And I'm not just saying that because he was played by the whiny actor that played him. I'm saying, like, threw in all the Star Wars movies, even when he was just James Earl Jones, and we
I
could
think
at
it's
least
genetic. Like his son's
appreciate
pretty
him.
whiny.
They're whiny. They kind of like, it's all about, but why me? And I'm going to go kill people because this didn't go my way. It might have just been the way that George Lucas was writing it or trying to get us to feel for them. But quite honestly, the majority of the time, I find the Skywalkers to be whiny babies. Which, odd enough, Luke Skywalker, his character's name and his means and everything is actually based on the Norse mythological character Loki. Skywalker is another iteration name for Loki. Luke, meaning light, was also an iteration of Loki. So he's actually supposed to be Loki, and then Darth Vader, the reason they got that naming was from the old Nordic sense of saying Darth Vader. So the Vader comes from father and how they pronounced it in ancient Nordic words. So there's your little tidbit there.
So are you saying that Lucas had planned it all out from the very beginning, and the evidence is in the naming of these characters?
I think that Lucas wrote the entire idea in his head by reading one book by a famous author. I can't think of his name right now, but he wrote a book called The Hero's Cycle. And in that book, this professor went through explaining how to get a character to go through dynamic change, and it's a cycle. So he reviewed all of the classic myths and stories and everything of that nature and basically broke it down into a formula called the hero cycle. In that, Lucas took that class and has said before that he came up with most of his ideas from that, and then based a lot of the aesthetic appeal on Japanese warrior armor, so the samurai warrior armor, and then a lot of the naming within Nordic myth.
Like Kurosawa type Japanese samurai movies.
Right. So he fused a lot of things in.
On HBO Max.
What's funny too is because Kurosawa was influenced by westerns, and if you look at Star Wars, it's kind of a space western. You know,
right?
It's come full circle, especially if you watch Mandalorian. Like that is the epitome of space western.
It's almost like if you break it down to a certain point, you don't have to be the best writer in the world. Which George Lucas, he did a great job. He brought something to the public that everybody enjoys and loves. I'm not trying to hit on him on it, but we know that he's not the greatest literary artist. But I think that he broke it down to where he understood there was a formula. And if you stick to the formula, pretty much no matter how you do it, you've got it down. So he brought the formula to the screen. And part of that, I think that dynamic change that we like to see in a lot of our characters is the villainous person seen in a heroic light. Your Doctor Doom, when he eventually tried to take Iron Man's place. Your, like I said, Deathstroke eventually did like a hero's run. You got characters like the Red Hood from Batman who will go completely villainous, but then you want to root for them to make the better choices to be better people.
What about Yondu? I think he was on my list too.
Yondu Adanta was a great one that they did within the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I think they did a great job with him.
Like I might have teared up a little bit.
Oh, I definitely did. I mean, the first time I saw it, I was allergic to it.
You know, I couldn't imagine enjoying the second movie more than the first one. The first one was so good, so I had toned down my expectations a bit. But oh my God, the second movie is a work of art.
It was great. And speaking of certain characters that just you love to see them on the screen, one of the people who did it well was Ian McKellen, but Magneto, character that you see as a villainous person, but then you find out has a lot of great potential to themselves.
And he's got a lot of backstory, that builds up his character.
Yeah, so you see a lot, but he's a lot less whiny than a Skywalker, so it's a little bit more fun to watch him do it.
Yeah, and
Because he's like, I'll still kill you. I'm being good,
You
but
know,
I'll still crush
half
you.
the time I don't blame him. You know, like I can understand those emotions he's dealing with, and with someone who, you know, a human being with emotions, and then someone who has that level of power, right? So, like, yeah, your daughter was just murdered in front of you, and there's the guy standing over there, and you could just, you know, wave your hand, and like,
Yeah.
I got a little teared up at that moment, like that. You know, the movie itself wasn't like, you know, the best. But that
But
moment, like,
the story makes it, well, because, you know, and I have to say with a lot of the X-Men movies, even though the great story is there, a lot of the movies just weren't portrayed in the best possible way. But the potential for it is there, and the story is heartbreaking, and those are the things that make those characters really dynamic and fun to read and watch. But before we go over time, I want to bring up a question to you, gents, and I just want to ask you this: beyond your heroes turn villains or your villains turn heroes, what villain would you like to see? One of your favorite comic book or pop culture villains. What villain would you like to see get their own spotlight and turn heroic?
Ron, you're gonna have to take this one first because I gotta think about it.
Man, I
Can't
gotta
be
think about it,
Deadpool
too.
because Deadpool already, you know, got well. This is you got time. I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh,
Give me
geez.
one.
Dark Side.
We're going to get Dark Side saving people. That would be a very interesting spotlight. That would be something.
Well, I
Maybe
have a good one.
something worse than him. All right, what's up?
And like I don't know how you would write this, and I you know if you do write this, I don't want it to be like some sort of cop out. But if you could somehow turn Carnage into a good man,
You know, they actually did a little spin on him for a while called Inverted. It was right during the Axis storyline that they were doing, and basically the Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom messed up a spell. And when they messed up that spell, heroes were inverted to villains, and villains were inverted to heroes. Carnage actually had a good little miniseries run where he was trying to be all American and heroic and save people. He was just really bad at it because he was still a sociopath.
oh,
But it's an actual if you ever get a chance to look into that, it was a very interesting. I'll probably try to lend that to you. We're gonna
it'd be
figure
an
out this
interesting dynamic, I think.
this-
Well, like so, once someone who's a sociopath goes down that power trip of killing people, it's really hard to pull them back. But just
well, you've
because
got
you're a
Venom that
sociopath-
was that way. So Venom in and of himself was that character, sociopathic, broken, villainous. But then what happens? People
he would
really
never
liked
kill
him.
people. Like at least initially, like he would just want to
bit
eat
their heads
Spider-Man's
off
brain.
and stuff. Well, yeah,
Well,
it was
I
always
don't think
about
so.
brains. I'm glad they kind of steered away from the brains.
Yeah, it was
thing.
always about brains. Like I remember one issue, like I don't think he'd actually killed anyone, and he had like killed someone and then like eaten their brains, and then he was like he couldn't, he just did it, and he was always, he told himself he had always just really kind of joked. He thought it was a joke to himself. He would never actually do it, but there was something wrong with him. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But the character, yeah, obviously the connection with the symbiote was driving the man insane as well. But like, I was just gonna say that like you can be a sociopath without being a killer. You can actually be a
That's
very
true.
good person.
No, you can still abide by the law if you need to, and if there's good
Like-
people in your life.
Like
to
say
keep
for
you there.
example, if anyone is a Star Trek: The Next Generation fan out there, Data technically
Is a sociopath.
he's a sociopath. Like he can't feel your emotions. Like he has no empathy for you. But you know,
But he has
by
good
all
people
other measure-
there guiding him. So without Picard guiding Data, you don't have a Data that's not a sociopath.
Well,
You know, you have to have the crew.
his brother, who is not a sociopath but a psychopath. Really, he can feel and he understands what you feel. He just doesn't care. You know?
Right.
And so, and when Data does get feelings, it affects him in an interesting way. He ends up overcoming it, though.
Yeah.
But like
They always had a
it's
great story arc with him. I especially liked it in the movie where the Borg Queen gave him flesh. So
Oh,
he
yeah.
could actually feel. He could feel sensation beyond just
Oh
emotion.
yeah.
So that was very
slightly
interesting. with him.
disturbing to watch. You know, them.
It was very weird
Yeah.
to watch that. But before we go, I wanted to say that the one that I would like to see is actually Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash. I would
Ooh,
like to
yes,
see
that's a
a
good one.
version of him where viewed from the future standpoint, the time that he's leaving and coming back to, Maybe he and his people were living through the year 2020, and he was constantly going back to try and take away murder hornets, but then all of a sudden a sandstorm hit. He's like, oh no, I have to go back and change time again. But something to that standard where the Flash was actually bad in their time because of something some greater thing that he had done took away from something. I don't know how to write it, but I think that maybe we could put Scott Snyder on it. And that could really work out. Scott Snyder, if you ever hear your name linked to anything on YouTube, check us out and get on top of making the Reverse Flash heroic in a standpoint issue. That would be great.
Get on it.
Anyway, that's our trope for the night. That's our opinions on things and our views. I'd like to thank my boys for joining me for this. John, as always, your set is looking amazing. We'll eventually get to where we can all have a cool set. That'd be nice. And Ronnie, thank you for joining us, even though you are in pain, sir. That was appreciated of you. Until
Yeah,
next
my wife
time.
even made a cameo.
Yeah, I see. I saw her. We're on speaker view, so I don't know if they'll have seen her, but even Casey showed up. So thank you for joining us. As always, click like, subscribe, share with your friends, tell people about us. Even if you hate us, leave hate comments because that will fuel our power. We love you. Share with your grandma and your friends. And until next time, don't forget to check out all the great podcasts presented to you by Saturday Night Gaming. They are great. Go ahead and find them on iTunes, Google Play, Podbean. We're on several different sources. You can find our wiki page, the Heavenscape Wiki, and that will give you an insight into our games. And listen to us on your long car rides or just when you're at work and you don't want the boss to know that you're not doing your job. All right? And we appreciate everything you do, and we'll see you next time.
In a lonely, lonely desert east of Nairobi, there were some pyramids standing there. Who knows what formation they were in? Then a hero named Hydro walked in and he said, here I am in the sand again. Here I am up on the pyramid. There's some light near. I don't know where it is, but here I am. Turn the page. Take it, Danny. Dun, dun, tsh, dun, 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 tsh. Unless we're SNG, cause it's Saturday. Playing a game, got dice on the table. Scott's gonna tell you if you're able. Your character dies, gotta re-roll. That's how it goes when you play with us. It's SNG on Saturday. Watch Turn the Page. You must do it. Watch it. Turn the page, turn the page, turn the page. Drink coffee, 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 and watch Turn the Page.